Shaun Sethna, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mateo. I'm really glad that you reached out. Happy to be here.
Excellent. So Shaun, you are a lawyer, but you post in LinkedIn very regularly. I enjoy your posts. I enjoy your content. But when did this start? When did you start posting regularly in LinkedIn, and where were you in your career as a lawyer?
Yeah. So it started in January of last year. So it's been a little bit more than a year. And you're right. I went from never having posted on LinkedIn ever. I don't think I had ever commented on anything really up until maybe the months leading up to it. And then all of a sudden I started posting every day, like every work day. So I had been at Altisource, where at one point we were coworkers. We had been there for about 9 years, and I was a good 15, 16 years into my career generally, at the time that I started.
Nice. Why did you start doing it?
So look, it's a kind of boring and self-serving answer, and that's that. I was deputy general counsel at the time. I had been a senior in-house lawyer for a really long time, and I felt ready to really want to take that step to become a general counsel, the lead lawyer in-house. And I had gone about it the only way I knew how, which was from past job searches to just look for job postings, apply online, maybe try to contact some recruiters, see if they were aware of anything, and then just wait and hope that things happen. But that was going nowhere. I was getting no responses when I was just applying online, meaning not even a single interview. A little bit more luck going through recruiters, but not really advancing. And I started trying to get advice from various people, and they said, "Look, I mean, at this level, you've got to get your name out there. People have to kind of know who you are." And I thought to myself, I mean, I guess that's fair, but I mean, I'm in Houston, and I want to stay in tech. And Houston is probably the worst city in America for being tech focused, because it's got so many under industries and energy, chemicals, even
Right.
medicine, but not tech. And so I was trying to think, well, me going to a bunch of lunches and meeting people, that's not going to do anything. And I think a lot of people said, yo, why don't you write some articles, or why don't you, try to give a speech somewhere or give a talk somewhere? And I thought, yeah, I'd be completely fine with that. But how am I supposed to just go to random people and say, hey, you want me to write an article sometime? Do you want me to go give a talk sometime? That didn't feel natural. And so somebody suggested, I think a couple of people suggested, why don't you just start posting your thoughts on LinkedIn? And honestly, it sounded like something that I would absolutely not like doing, that it would make me miserable. But I kind of looked at it in the same way as exercising or eating veggies. Like I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it at all. But if I want to have the life that I want to have, meaning a healthy one, then I have to do that. And so if I want the kind of career that I want, okay, maybe this is something I have to do. But about 2 weeks into it, I started really enjoying it. I started really enjoying it, and it kind of motivations and everything changed from there. But as I said, it was a very self-serving, boring answer for why I got started in the first place.
We will get on it later, but it worked, right? So that's the interesting thing about it. So how did you go about it, and what did you post, and what do you like posting about now, right? Tell us about that. You started posting first maybe something, then you started changing, you started realizing how the audience was reacting.
Yeah, I think when I first started, my plan was to largely post about legal topics and topics on being a manager of a team. Because certainly as far as my work, goes, being a manager, mentoring others, really helping them grow and develop, getting everybody kind of satisfied and excited about their career. That's what I'm most passionate about, and so that felt natural. And I felt, look, I'm a lawyer. It would only make sense for me to talk about some legal topics. So some IP here and there, some contracts here and there, and it would go from there. And that was my plan. But it turned out, I think I found a good groove with the management topics. I think people did respond to what I had to say about that. I think people liked that, and I was enjoying that. But on the legal side, there were so many people out there already posting about contracts, posting about IP, and that was their focus. And so I started to feel, yeah, I mean, I have a unique perspective sometime, but it's a crowded space, and it's not something that I'm super passionate about. So I kind of reduced my posting on that. I still do it from time to time, but it's pretty light. What Some of the things that I realized that I enjoyed talking about, that probably initially felt, this isn't what LinkedIn is for, but I did start to get comfortable with it and did start to resonate with people, are things like, the challenges of being a working dad, and not just the challenges, but also the amazing rewards of that, and just talking about being excited to be a dad. And that, certainly, I'm sure there are many people out there who are like, what is this guy talking about? This is LinkedIn. It has nothing to do with work. But I would say it does have a little bit to do with work, because first of all, there are a lot of working parents out there, and people like connecting over that, and their strategies and issues that apply to all of us. But there's a more specific reason that I do it, which is, I think dads in general, fathers in general, men in general, should be more vocal about caretaking, and even if they don't have kids, doing things at home, et cetera, being a 100% fully equal partner for all things outside of work. And that's important, because talking about that makes a kind of younger fathers more comfortable about doing that, and B, even more importantly, it will hopefully start to change the narrative, and people will see it as something that applies both equally to men and women. So women in the workplace will stop feeling, or hopefully gradually stop feeling, that that all these burdens are on them, and that it's just expected that women be the ones to take care of kids and leave early to pick up the kids, and will have to miss work if the kids are sick, because I get that society still feels that way a lot of the time, but it shouldn't. There's no reason. And if we don't start, if dads don't start really not only doing it but talking about it, and talking about it loudly, then change isn't going to happen, or it's going to happen much more slowly than it should.
I like your posts very much, and I can see that messaging, and it was surprising, right? We know each other from before. To me, you were an amazing lawyer, right? But I didn't expect to see you posting the way you did, and to open up the way you did. So I can say, as one of your audience members, that I enjoyed, and I know other people do. But when you started seeing the effect you had on people, right, and the comments they were leaving, and the amounts of reactions, and the amount of impressions, what did that reaction, what was the effect on you, right? How did you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly, especially on topics like that, the more emotional things about either the working parent things, or sometimes I just talk about emotions generally, and being willing to be open and honest about those, or even to some extent on managing a team, those topics that I feel really passionately about. When I would see that it was connecting with people, either saying, oh, I never thought about it this way, it's absolutely right, or yes, I think this, but I was always too shy or reserved to talk about that. It makes me feel really good. It does a couple of things. It makes me feel like I'm helping other people, that I'm not just there talking and getting some likes. It's actually making some difference to people, and that on its own just makes me feel really good. It also has, given me a lot more confidence than I ever had in my life. I think we all have things that we wonder, am I the only one who does this? Maybe I'm wrong. Everybody else does it a certain way. And when you get comfortable, you share some of that, and then you find out, hey, a lot of other people think that way or are going through similar challenges. I'm not some, weird guy in the corner that nobody can relate to. That makes me kind of more confident, more comfortable with the person that I am, which impacts me professionally, personally, across the board.
Very nice. And where are you now in your career? And did LinkedIn play any role on that?
Yeah, so I'm now for the last month, almost exactly a month, I've been in a new role. You can see in the virtual background behind me. So about a month ago, I left where I had been for 10 years, and I started as general counsel at Tech GC. And I'm just so thrilled to be here. It's the first time in my career I've ever switched jobs and not thought, oh my goodness, what did I just do? I made a huge mistake. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, and don't get me wrong, it's challenging and it's a lot, and I do get overwhelmed. But it's the kind of overwhelmed of, there are so many really cool things that I really want to do, and I just have to figure out the time to prioritize and get into it. But as for LinkedIn playing a role, I mean, that's a tremendous understatement. A lot of people say, oh, LinkedIn helped me get this job because maybe they saw they had a connection to the company and asked for an introduction or something like that. And yeah, and LinkedIn's great for that. But in my case, I mean, I would not have been qualified for this job but for what I'd been doing on LinkedIn over the last year. I would not have been interested in the job if I hadn't gone through that process and realized that I like talking and kind of producing content and engaging with other people. And I would not have even known that the job existed. I mean, it all came up because it was somebody that, it's for an organization, Tech GC, that through my LinkedIn activity, I had already spoken at a couple of their events last year. So they already kind of knew who I was. And then somebody who was really close with the co-founders that I had met with a couple of times, again, who I met through LinkedIn. As soon as he heard that they were looking, he planted the seed in their head right away, saying, call Shaun. We had conversations, we were on the same page from the beginning, and it went from there. So yeah, it's not just LinkedIn played a role. I mean, LinkedIn was absolutely necessary to so many parts of this process.
It's an amazing story. And you're now leading a lot of people, right? From a very important place of taking care of them from a human resources perspective, right? Do you feel like some of those people actually kind of already knew who you are, like your values, like some of what you are, you had already communicated because of your LinkedIn activity?
Absolutely. That was one of the unexpected benefits that I didn't even really think about. So yeah, certainly when I started here, a lot of people, I mean, a few people I had already met through speaking at some events, but a lot of people even that I hadn't met had followed me, or at least they started following me after they heard that I would be joining soon. And so by the time that I started, there were several people that I was meeting that they were saying, oh, it feels like I already kind of know you. I like what you write. I've been excited to work with you, which has never happened to me in a job. Every time I've started a new job, I'm, new kid in school. Nobody has any idea who I am. Kind of sit at the lunch table by myself until, I start meeting people. And although this is virtual, so I am still eating lunch by myself. I definitely felt really connected to people almost right away, and it really helped. But even more interesting than that, Matteo, is back at my last job at Altisource. I mean, you mentioned like when we worked together, you knew me as a lawyer, and that was it. And I think I was a good lawyer that people liked working with, but nobody really knew anything about me. Maybe, the few people that I work with closely probably knew that I had a couple kids, but that's probably it. They didn't really know anything about my personality. I was always polite, but I was always kind of business and just focused on getting the work done. And I think I started even before the LinkedIn stuff. I started showing a little bit of my personality at work. Started making a focus to have more virtual coffees with some people to get to know everybody as people, but really not much. And so there were people that I'd worked with for 8 or 9 years that didn't really know who I was, and I hadn't taken the time to really get to know them. And by kind of sharing all that perspective on LinkedIn, they started to feel like they really knew me as a person. And I was, oh, that's not just some boring lawyer over there that I can call to help with my contracts. Like, I could talk to him about things, and we have some things in common. And I just started developing so much better relationships with, as I said, people that I'd already known for several years. And they started feeling more comfortable coming to me to talk about their problems. And so I was a more, certainly a better coworker, I think, to be around. And honestly, a more effective lawyer. I mean, that helped them trust me more. And so they were more likely to come to me with whatever problems that they had. And so I could be more effective in helping them.
Very interesting. So you post a lot, right? Do you regret any of your posts?
I don't think so. I mean, certainly there are ones that I think, oh, this one's going to be fantastic. This one's going to go viral. And then it gets like, 10 people or so liking it, and that's it, and nobody ever sees it. So there's that kind of thing. But no, I don't think I do. I'd say the closest one to a regret, but even that I don't, is and you may remember this, although I'm not offended if you don't, because it was like 7-8 months ago. But well, I took a very unusual step in my career journey where I was kind of actively interviewing for a while. I felt I was starting to get close on a job opportunity, and I actually got a job offer, and then I turned it down because it just wasn't the right fit. For what I needed as a family, as a dad. I wouldn't be the kind of dad that I like being.
Yeah.
And I decided in that moment that I wanted to be open with LinkedIn about that. And so I posted back in the summer basically saying, hey, I know nobody talks about this, but I'm going to do it. I had been interviewing for a job for the last several months, and nobody talks about it, and you fear that you're going to be seen as disloyal or anything like that. But you know what? I'm going to take the risk that I'm confident enough in my position here that people aren't going to feel that way, that it's not going to change anything, and I'm doing this so that I have some things to say about the job process and tips to make it better for other people and problems that need to be solved. But I also want to encourage everybody to feel like, everybody knows that people interview for other jobs, right? Nobody's around there thinking everybody's going to be here for forever. And so why are we all keeping it to ourselves? And so I felt like sharing that. Now, I certainly don't regret that part. I think there was a part. I think I also said, and I'm not looking anymore because I'm happy where I am, and that part was true too. I mean, for a long time I didn't consider anything else. But then kind of at the end of the year, I did start being open to other opportunities, which obviously led to where I am now.
Right.
And so I did kind of feel, did I word that too strongly? Am I going to look absolutely foolish and have no credibility because, 4, 5, 6 months after I said that, I'm leaving to take a new job. So that's probably the closest thing to regret. But even that, not really, because I kind of tried to address it and say, yeah, I did it. I changed my mind. People change their mind. Different circumstances happen, and here we are. But so yeah, that's probably the closest.
I remember that one. I think it was very bold, but honestly, I felt like, wow, like this guy is out there, like really out there. And there was one where you even mentioned that you asked for permission, right? You went to your supervisor, the GC at the time, and you said, hey, I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to start posting. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So to me, it was super bold, but at the same time, super honest, right? You were talking about stuff that other people don't talk about, and you were normalizing stuff that other people just don't talk about and have a lot of fear to talk about. And at the end of the day, you don't want to go too far, but you're also, making a favor for the organization you're working in currently, because you're letting them know how you feel, what your plan is, why you are looking for something, right? And that's input that as an employer you always want to have. You may not like it, but you need it. You need that input to do things better. So I think it was very good. What posts make you most proud on the flip side?
I think the ones, it's really the pride actually usually comes from the reactions, kind of what we were talking about earlier, like the ones who say, oh man, I thought I was the only one going through this. That thank you so much for talking about it. I think those, I mean, the topics that come to mind, like I did one about, crying in the workplace, and people generally don't talk about it,
No.
and men certainly don't talk about it. Um, and I was just like, you know what? I got something to say here. I've done it. I've done it at all 3 jobs that I ever had. So far, not at this 4th one. But I was like, let's go and see what happens. And um, I think the reactions to that, I love so much about that. There was the odd, I think there were a couple of trolls in there being like, what you crying for? Are you not a man or something like that? But that I didn't care about. The vast majority, like 99% of them were ones, like I said, that people like, yes, thank you for talking about this, for normalizing it. It's a normal human reaction. Then there were people who said, hey, and sometimes there were like women saying, I have never cried in the workplace. I'm not a crier, but thank you for doing this. We all express our emotions differently, and we should be free to do that. And then there were the ones that combated stereotypes the most. I mean, there was one person who was like ex-military, like a man ex-military, saying, "Yeah, I've done it too." And I was like, this is fantastic that I'm helping start this discussion out there. So that's the one probably that sticks out. Um, and I also I like talking about neurodiversity as well, and I try to do that once a month. And I've learned that a lot of people, a lot of smart, inclusive, progressive people um, don't know a lot of these things, and knowing that I am helping educate some people who really, really appreciate that information, who that information could help them be a better ally to neurodivergent people in the future. That makes me happy as well.
Very nice. I remember fondly the one about crying. I posted about the times I responded to your post, and I talked about the times that I had cried as well. And there were people from my team that it's like everyone started sharing their own experiences, right? So I remember that one, and yeah, you should feel proud about that one. It was very intense and not right. I mean, even I'm from South America. In South America, I think culturally speaking, crying, maybe a little bit more open, right? But to me, like that in the US was always like a taboo, right? And to see you talking about that the way you did, I don't want to get too, but it made me want to go hug you, right? Like, dude, but yeah, what lines do you avoid crossing? Is there anything you don't post about, you don't like posting about?
Yeah, I am very careful. I don't ever want to post about an experience with like a specific person, even if I'm not going to mention them by name, like a negative experience. This
Right.
is something, don't do this instead. Sometimes there's a really good idea there, and there's a really good point. And so I may, this is the one time when I may kind of blur the truth a little bit and change the facts a little bit so that it's not so that that person so nobody can really figure out who it was, including that other person should they
Right.
be. So that, you know, I'm not the kind of person to kind of passively aggressively, like I wouldn't like have a bad interaction with my boss and then go type on LinkedIn, here's what not to do as a boss, and like
Yeah.
lay out what he or she just did. You know, not saying that's wrong. I do know that some people do that, and I, you know, it's not what I would do. It's not I would be comfortable with. I would prefer, if I have an issue, to talk about with them directly, face to face, not anonymize it and put it on the internet. But I'm not saying there's anything wrong. People should deal with their struggles and the challenges they face in the way that's most comfortable to them. But that's something that I'm not comfortable with. And so that even means kind of leaving a potentially great post on the sidelines, because I was like, no, I don't think I can find a way to effectively do this without it seeming that I'm passively aggressively kind of calling somebody else out.
Got it. On that line, do you use Twitter?
No, I don't. My what I think is my greatest fault by far on my LinkedIn content is that I cannot write short posts. I have tried over and over again, and I'm just always like, oh, but I want to make this other point. Oh, I want to clarify this, and then it ends up being really long. And so with Twitter, I mean, that would be impossible for me. I mean, I say that it would probably be a great development tool for me to do it, to get in the mindset and
Mm,
practice the skill of doing it briefly, but it still feels like an insurmountable challenge. And then with all the, you know, the changes at Twitter over the last several months, I feel, you know, it's probably not the best time to jump to a new platform either.
I agree. What do you think about AI generated content?
So I think about it a lot, and I even posted about AI today. And you know, in all candor, this was a post that I was feeling really good about. That I was like, hey, I bet a lot of people are going to like this, and it doesn't seem like that's going to happen, and that's fine. But So I think about it a lot. I think it's an amazing tool for sure. I've been completely impressed, both in terms of you know, as an information source and getting it to do a first draft of various different kinds of content, whether we're talking about social media or actual work content, like putting a document together or anything like that. It is very useful. I think, as I said, it's useful as a first draft to get your, you know, if you don't want to stare at a blank page, it's a good, easy way to get something other than a blank page that you can then react to. I think, you know, I candidly, there was one post that I had, I forget what, it may have been one of my neurodivergent ones, where I had written the post, I had a point that I was making, but I couldn't think of a good conclusion. I was like, how am I going to tie this all together? I was having a bit of writer's block. And I was like, you know what? Copy paste into Chat GPT. I was like, come up with a conclusion for this, like a short concluding paragraph of two sentences, something. And it was pretty good. It matched like my voice. It encapsulated what I was trying to do. Like I fiddled with the words, but I largely used it. I was like, that was really helpful. When I do use it for a first draft, like if I have an idea and I'm like, hey, write a post about this, I usually don't like it so much. I usually, at this point, I will just start from scratch and do it myself. But when it comes to fine tuning one that you already have, I mean, yes, I only did it that one time, but it was wonderful. I do worry. I do have some worries about it. I do worry, you know, as it becomes better and easier, more accessible, and more people get comfortable with it. You know, what are we going to see out there? Just like, let's start with social media content. Is it all going to be, or like 99% going to be AI generated? And then do people start using AI even for comments? Because honestly, one of the most challenging things for me is coming up with good comments to other people's posts, responses to people who post on mine. You know, sometimes it's easy, but sometimes it's like, yeah, that is a good point, but I don't have much to add. So should I just say good point? I mean, what do I do here? Um, And so I could see it being of value. But then what kind of world is that? Like an AI is generating the post and then AIs are
Yeah.
commenting. So what's happening? What's the real value? And then I kind of go down a rabbit hole on that. I was like, well, maybe that still has value because people are still reading it and enjoying the discussion, even if it's machines talking to each other. Maybe I don't know. But and then I also and I think we talked about this, when you invited me to come on. I do also wonder, stepping outside of kind of social media content, and we talk about TV and movies and books and everything. With the as it gets better, and people get more comfortable, are we going to see things where like you can have an AI generated movie in a few minutes, that the video, audio, everything, like it knows, and it would look like they're the same. It's not made up actors and actresses. It takes the voice and the images from what it knows, and you could just create this movie and it looks like Denzel Washington and Julia Roberts and whoever people like it, it's actually there. Could that happen? I would imagine technologically we're only a few years away from doing
Yep.
that, and get into legal issues of, are we going to let that happen or not? And then the same thing, I was imagining, I even played with, I forget it was Chat GPT or one of the others, but I'm a big fan of the show Friday Night Lights, that most people haven't heard of, but I loved it. And it went off the air 10, 11 years ago. And I just wrote a little prompt saying, hey, come up with a plot line for a pilot of a spin-off to that show focusing on these two characters. And it just, like, within seconds spat something out. And I was engaged with it. I was like, oh yeah, I want to read this. I want to find out what happens. This is an interesting story. And it doesn't seem like it's that big of a leap from there to what I was saying, where the whole thing just actually gets generated. And then when that happens, what's that going to do? Like, is it going to be that if anybody has an idea, they can just type it in and get a custom made entire 7-season TV show dedicated to that, and it's good and it's in the style that you like? But then do we lose new creativity because its creativity is just based on what's already been done and thinking of a new way to do it? And then do we lose the social aspect to it, that if I can just create exactly the show that I like, then there's no reason for you to watch that show, because you, Mateo, will watch this other show. And then people never talk about the kind of, oh, did you see this movie? They're like, no. It's just like, oh yeah, because it was custom made for me and nobody else has seen it. What does that do? I think I don't have any of the answers, but these are the questions I've been
You just wrote a nice plot for a Black Mirror episode.
I don't know what Black Mirror is, so maybe that's
you
something
don't know?
I should.
Oh man, you gotta watch it. It's
Okay.
it's basically taking aspects of our daily life and the plausible future and coming up with ideas like you just did, right? Of extremes and weird situations that might happen because of technology and stuff. I think you would enjoy it. But I completely agree with you, and I don't have the answers either. It's enough topic for another podcast in itself.
We're a lot smarter than I am, so
I think you were making great points, and I think your attorney mind is very good at picking up different threads of the issue and going on it to see what will happen if you take it to the extreme, right? Very good. So last question, Shaun. If your kids were starting law school today, what would be your advice to them?
Yeah. So, I mean, if they're already starting law school, I will assume that I've already, told them, hey, this is what my experience as a lawyer was like. I assume this is what you want to do. You are not doing this because you feel pressure because mommy and I are lawyers or anything like that. So let's just assume that. So if they're starting law school today, I would encourage them to do a couple of things. One is really understand that law school does very little, at least in the US, to prepare you for being a lawyer. And so use law school for what it is, meaning that your last chance, unless you go get another degree, your last chance to learn for the sake of learning, to learn because you're curious, and don't be thinking about, oh, I should take this class with that professor because that might help me get a better job one day. No, the odds of that are relatively small, and you're going to blow your last chance to really just satisfy your intellectual curiosity. The one exception to that may be something that I would tell them, and hopefully by the time they are of that age, even more so, is to take some practical classes. When I was in law school, they were starting to do a few of those. I didn't take any of them because I don't know, I was lazy and I didn't think about it, and I didn't have a parent telling me that. But yes, I would certainly take some of those practical classes. And then in terms of actually being a lawyer, I mean, I would really, really, really want, and I guess this part isn't just being a lawyer, but I think lawyers have this view that they need to do it like other people did it. Like there's a lot of, hey, do you have a sample of this? And let me look at this contract and do it the same way, or let me look at this brief and do it the same way. That's probably true in other professions, but I think lawyers do it more. And so I would encourage them to, while that's fine, and they should look at samples and get advice from other people, that there's no one way to do it. You have to figure out what is your style, and it's not just in writing, it's also your interactions. Like I try to be, like when I'm negotiating, I try to be pretty much, maybe not completely, but pretty much a straight shooter. Like I'm not going to, if I have authorization to go to 100 on something, I'm not going to sit here and say, nope, 70 as high as I can go, no matter what. Yeah, if that doesn't work, go take. I'm not going to do that. That's not. I don't think I could pull that off authentically. It's not saying that's bad or good. It's just knowing what works for me and what I'm comfortable with. And so really empowering them to be thinking about that, to never feel pressured to do something somebody else's way, and to figure out what makes sense for them. That's the kind of long-term advice that I would give them.
Excellent. Shaun, I appreciate it very, very much. Thank you for your time. It's always a pleasure. And we'll stay in touch, definitely.
Absolutely. No, thank you, Mateo. I look, this felt just like any one of our other conversations, except, with me being rude and not asking you a single question about yourself. I really, really enjoyed it. So thanks for having me.